Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Conversations from CoatingsCoffeeShop.com. My name is Megan Ellsworth. I'm your host, and I'm really excited because today's episode is brought to you by Henry, a Carlisle company. And we're talking about a contractor's journey in restoration through fluid applied roofing systems and all that jazz. And I have three total experts chatting with me today on this topic, and I'm just so excited. First, a little housekeeping. This is being recorded, so it'll be up on coatingscoffeeshop.com within 24 to 48 hours. And we
Sorry.
will, yep, you're good. And we will be able to share that out with you and anything. If you have questions, the chat is open. So please get chatting and let us know if you have any questions, comments, emotional outbursts. Okay, so thank you again to Henry for sponsoring this episode of Coffee Conversations. Let's dive right in. John T. Hull, welcome to Coffee Conversations. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun chat today.
Yay! I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Again, I'm John T. Hall. I live down in the Florida Panhandle, so I'm Southeast based. Been in the roofing industry for a little over 30 years now. Started out as a contractor, did that as long as I could stand it. No, I'm just kidding. It was a great experience. I was in the contracting piece for about 17 years, primarily based around the Southeast. But in that, we did traditional roofing, but by the time I sold out and got out of the business, we were probably almost 60% fluid applied restoration projects. So it was a big part of my business. From there, I went on to work for one of the larger roof coatings and roofing products manufacturers globally. So spent several years there running that business, both sales, technical R&D, kind of all that for the roofing products group. And
Wow.
then now for the past 7 years, I've been a roof consultant. So I specialize in roof assessments, moisture surveys, but full gamut of right specs, assessments, oversee projects, the whole bit. I work with Tramex Meters. They're an Irish company, but they're kind of the leader in roof moisture or moisture meters globally. So I serve as their roof moisture expert, if you will, globally as well. So support
Wow.
them in addition to my consulting business. So that's a little about me. Also run a lot of training programs in the industry. So we offer certification and training classes as well. So stay busy for sure.
Yeah, wow. Oh my gosh. Definitely staying busy. And an Irish company. That's so cool. So thank you for being here, John. I'm so excited to have your wisdom as a roof consultant on the conversation. So thank you. Eric, good morning. Can you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, Megan. Thank you for having me. Sure. My
Excellent.
name is Eric Thompson. I have roughly around 21 years in the coating, sealants, urethane, and roofing industry. Myself, focused strongly on the education and knowledge portion of that part of it. Recently, I've been with Henry now, Carlisle Company, for just over 10 years back here in middle of August. And I'm
Wow.
currently in the role of our national technical training manager for our roof restoration business. I've been in that position for a little over 2.5 years now, and really the focusing on the education, the knowledge, and developing our Henry University program to educate both new and existing applicators, as well as focusing on even working with consultants, and trying to even building owners to help kind of understand what their pain points are, what they're looking for. At the same time, educating our solutions and is it a right fit, and it can help them solve their problems too.
Yeah, absolutely. That is fabulous. And congrats on 10-year anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Eric. I'm really excited to have you part of this conversation. Okay, last but not least is Pete Harding. Hi, Pete. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Pete Harding, founder of Go Green Roofing. We do primarily fluid applied in the western states. Well, it's half and half, fluid applied, single ply. And I've been roofing for since the 80s for 43 or 44 years, something like that.
Wow.
Started as a laborer, worked up, done every job in the office, not very well. had to start a company because I was a horrible employee. So, I just wanted to see what we were capable of. And throughout the journey, I met a lot of really, really good people that I felt weren't really taken care of. So the why of the company was to create a place for these excellent humans to really be their best and to provide, great roofing products to our clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I love that sentiment. And you can really tell that that is your purpose at Go Green and just the success you all have had. And I loved learning about your TikTok before we started. So everyone go follow Mr. Pete on TikTok. Okay, let's dive in. We have just three experts here. So Eric, I'd love for you to start at the beginning. Why should contractors add fluid applied roofing to their business?
Yeah, thank you again, Megan, again for having us. Um, Looking from a contractor adding it to their portfolio, it really starts out it's a very low cost of entry for equipment, so it's very easy to get into. Whether it's just starting out with squeegees and high quality with brushes and rollers, and not needing the expensive spending tens of thousands of dollars for equipment to start out with. And then, for a contractor, it's a higher margin portion of the business. At the end of the day, roofing contractors are, still got to make money, right? So, having higher margins, helps with that. And then even safety. It's safer than hot asphalt or torches on roofs. That's kind of keeping that standpoint. And at the end of the day is we're also looking at, options for building owners. Building owners becoming more educated. So having other solutions outside of either recovery or replacement, it kind of keeps them in the game and allows them to continue to compete in that industry at the same time. And building off of that, all roof systems require maintenance. So no different than us or any other fluid applied manufacturer, maintenance is part of the installation. So who better to maintain that roof and create those long-term revenue streams, for the life of that roof. And, that kind of ties into the sustainability portion of it too, is that
Yeah,
they're able to work that entire portion of it at the end of that warranty term. They're able to check for moisture again. They're able to make certain repairs, if any, and they're able to, again, continue to extend that roof, for many years down the road without having to fill landfills, without having to create additional emissions at the same time. And again, it's still that revenue continues to build across the entire portfolio for them.
yeah, so true. Pete or John, anything to add on why contractors should add fluid applied roofing to their business?
well, it's
I'd probably only add that as the business has evolved and changed and roofs have gotten more expensive, we're seeing more and more owners look for more options, and fluid applied is an option that more owners are asking for. So there's a big opportunity for it.
Yeah, yeah,
right. And with that said, if you're not supplying your clients with every type, you're going to miss out because every type of material, somebody else is going to do it. And as Eric stated, the profit margins are much higher.
right.
They're very lucrative. I like them.
I love it. Okay, John, what kind of contractors are expanding their capabilities into fluid applied systems, and how is the process different or similar between these different size companies or experience levels of the contractor?
No, that's a great question. And, kind of watching this piece of the industry for decades now that I have, and from the different angles and perspectives I've had, it's been really interesting to see, back years ago, decades ago, when I first started, it was usually your smaller roofers, your tier 3, tier 4, and some of your tier 2 roofers would use coatings. Really, back then it was more coatings than fluid applied restoration. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little deeper in our conversation today. But it's been interesting to watch the evolution, because like I say, it was most of your small roofers, and they would kind of use coatings and restoration as their gateway drug to work from steep slope shingles and metal into commercial low slope roofing via, they usually start with a small residential flat roof or a small metal roof and kind of transition over, learn the business, which is still a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But now in the past, well, probably especially the past 5 years, really seen a surge in your large tier one. I mean, your national roofers, even your global roofers, if you will. Starting to add this as a piece of their business, and I think it's just because it I've watched roof restoration and fluid applied roofing, come from 1-2% of the market share in commercial roofing to now, in the 20% range. So it's just become such a big part of the business that even the big guys have had to jump on. And they obviously have, and what they have exposure to, national accounts and bigger clients with bigger portfolios. And so now the bigger owners and the bigger portfolios, the REITs, the publicly companies, now they're starting to look at fluid applied as an option. So I think one's kind of fed the other and then fed back to the other. So it's really been interesting to see. And we've had a lot of consolidation in manufacturers. I mean, you've got
Right.
manufacturers, membrane manufacturers and what we call traditional roofing system manufacturers have bought fluid applied product lines. So now it's kind of out there as a more mainstream offering than it was, 20 years ago when you went to a guy's, storage unit and bought some homebrew aluminum roof coating straight out of a vat and filled your own buckets. It's the industry's come a long way in the last 20, 30
Yeah.
years. So yeah, and warranties and technology and experience and all that have really paved the way for roofers of all grounds for this to be an opportunity.
Yeah. That's huge. Wow, we already have questions coming in from the audience, which is great. But before we get to those, Pete, can you just tell us a little bit how you started in the fluid applied roofing area and why?
Well, exactly what John T. Hull said.
Yeah.
We were the guys driving in our old trucks, picking up 5-gallon buckets with rollers, and it wasn't that much. It was more of a coating back then, right? So
Mhm.
then a company out here in California started putting polyester in it and messing with the elongation and everything. And I have actually done everything Mr. Hull just talked about, from buying 5-gallon buckets to this year, we're on track to doing over 40,000, close to 50,000 squares of fluid applied roofing, right? And
Wow.
that's a lot. And
Hmm.
it's 50% of what we do, is we do about 50%. You can throw some shingles in there, but I have literally done exactly what he talked about, the exact same map. And it was very good because when you're doing the smaller jobs, you're learning how to do it correctly. You have all of your insurances, licenses, and you're building your confidence. And now, I've got, I believe it's 20 pumps, huge flatbed trucks,
Yeah.
everything's fully consolidated on the vehicles. It's a show when we pull up, and, we're doing roofs that are 10,000 square for large investment firms. And it's the last 20 years, the last 5 years, yeah. And I'm really happy to be at the forefront of that, for once, you know.
Yeah.
So anybody can get into it, but you got to give yourself some time, right? To learn and to do it right, to get set up right. So the roofers that want to move into commercial fluid applied applications, it just takes time, patience, sales and marketing, and making great relationships with the manufacturer. Like Henry's been around for 90 years. That's a
Yeah.
no-brainer. And then having great roofing consultant companies to work with, like John T. Hulse, and that's what will help you slowly move into that. People can do it faster than me. I've been doing it for 43 years, but if you start out too quickly, then there is a level of pain you're probably going to experience through mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So before we get much farther into the contractor's journey of adding fluid applied roofing to their business, we have a more technical question from the audience here. What are some of the telltale signs on a low slope roof that it is time for a fluid applied restoration? And maybe Pete, you can hit this.
I was hoping John would do that, but
Oh, John?
I'll just say it real quick. I look at the cap sheet. I'm talking about a cap sheet roof. Like, where's the mineral surface? How much mineral surface? The technology has jumped so much within even the last 5 years that you can start doing older roofs. Back when we started this, we are looking at 8 to 12-year-old roofs, or were the best. Now with the primers that are actually seeping into it, you can actually go to an older roof, but it's the usual telltale signs of a roof that needs a maintenance or a re-roof. But it's another tool in your toolbox. And I'd like to pass it off to John T and see what he has to say because I'm really interested in that.
No, good stuff, Pete. You're exactly right. I often will tell people, I looked at a roof this week for restoration that was 5 years old. And then sometimes I'll look at a roof for restoration that's 35 years old. And, kind of to Pete's point, a lot of it depends on, one, the initial workmanship of that roof when it was installed and the materials that went into it. If you built an outstanding, then you've got even a better candidate for restoration down the road. But also how it's been maintained. That's a big factor. But for me also, I talk to people all the time. When you look at a roof, and a lot of people think they go out and they'll visually look at a roof and say, oh, it's time for a restoration or whatnot. When you visually look at the roof, you're only seeing a small fraction of that roof. The expense and the bulk of the components are below the surface of that roof, with insulation and attachment and the deck and all that kind of stuff. So, when you're trying to decide when is a good time for roof restoration, the surface and the visual cues can give you a good idea that you maybe need to dig deeper, but then you need to dig deeper,
Yeah.
moisture surveys, destructive testing, things like that, to determine if the roof is a candidate and where you are in that progression of when it's time to restore it. But I will say this, back in the day, we used to coat roofs, and so people would just go out, they would put a white or an aluminum coating on a roof, and all that does is it basically will kind of time capsule or time lock that roof in the condition and the it was in when it was coated.
Mm.
Through restoration, we're seeing people go in a little more scientifically, if you will, with a little more due diligence on the front, and they're making repairs. Sometimes they're, installing new drain inserts, they're installing new flashings, new copings, cutting out wet materials, things like that. So they're actually improving and upgrading the physical condition of the roof, and then they're sealing it up with the proper, mastics and coatings and all that kind of stuff to, one, strengthen and enhance what's there, and also give that roof, a UV and weather protective coating to reduce the pace of deterioration and UV weathering and all that kind of stuff. So not just the most straightforward answer to your question. There's more to it than just looking at the roof, and that's why guys like myself and people like Pete and Eric that have been in the business a long time. I like, for example, I won't say a roof is a candidate or not a candidate based on drone images. I
Mm.
like to put my feet on the roof, and I like to feel what it feels like when I walk on it. I want to hear what it sounds like when I walk on it. Things like that can tell you a lot. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, so there's no definitive time. Visual cues, physical cues, and even what's going on, in the roof system or even inside the building. So longer answer than you wanted there, probably, but there you go.
No, that's great.
And
Yeah.
can I say a little thing about that? A lot of the very large roofs for the very large clients we do are all moisture tested and all core checked. And we usually work with a roofing consultant like Mr. Hall, in these projects because you're talking 2, 3, $4 million projects
Yeah.
that they're just not going to go, oh, well, fluid applied to the cheapest. Let's just go with that, because it's still $3 to $4 million, right? So
Yeah.
we rely heavily on all those tests prior to even um, mobilizing anything. for
Yeah,
fluid apply.
definitely. And to kind of expand on both those, the running joke is, when is your roof a candidate for, restoration? I don't know, is your roof flat and does it leak?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, hey, that's a good start, right? But,
Yeah.
going back on visual cues and everything as well as, it if it doesn't pass the eye test, it's probably not going to pass those other portions of it, of moisture
Correct.
testing, adhesion testing, and possibly, underlying stuff that John touched on that, we just can't see, right? We're not Superman, Superwoman. We don't have X-ray vision.
Right.
But yeah, I have a lot of tag cliche lines, and one of them is, walk away from more roofs than I'm able to restore, and that's just the reality of it, unfortunately. Right? It's not a miracle in a bucket.
Right.
So you just because it can be doesn't mean it should be. So
Yeah.
when you're looking at this, and there's a lot of factors, again, making this a little bit lengthier, but it's hard to just to look at. But it's just to pre-qualify. It's the next step, and the next step, and the next step. Because you can look at a roof and it looks great visually, and all of a sudden you go check the moisture and realize that it was an overlay over a gravel roof that was soaking wet, and now the whole thing has to come off, right? And
Yeah.
beautiful, it was beautiful from the top. It's like, hey, this is a perfect candidate. Pass all the adhesion tests. We're good to go. It's in seams are great, penetrations are great. Oh wait, this thing's 80% wet underneath, and we got to tear it down the deck and start over.
Yeah.
So it goes past just some of those stuff. But it's part of the big picture, and that's why restoration versus coating, is a different type of a process.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, great advice, gentlemen. Thank you, Gordon, for the question. So Pete, going back to um, the contractor journey, what can manufacturers do to help contractors succeed initially when they start adding fluid applied roofing to their business?
Education, I always there's when they're a smaller roofing contractor, and I did this, you kind of just grab a bucket of stuff and go do it, right? And get your paycheck and hope everything's okay. And training and education are huge, and it's not just the application of the product, like sales, learning how to sell the product, to speak to the product. And I'm here because I believe in this, and I've done this for so long, and am very passionate about it because it is sustainable and renewable, right? And that's what I start out with. And the client understands that I am passionate about this. So to partner with somebody like Henry is one of the first things I tell any new contractor to do, because if it's like, I'm not sure how the saying goes, teach a person how to fish and they'll eat for a week, give them a person a fish and they'll eat for a day, right? Well,
Hmm.
that's what the manufacturer is doing, is they're teaching you how to fish, and you have a partnership going. And seriously, with Carlisle and Henry's, this company would not be what it is without its first um, partnership with Carlisle prior to them purchasing Henry's, because we do a massive amount of single ply also. And the partnership with the manufacturers is so important, and the education aspects, like we constantly do education through Carlisle, and over and over and over. I have a wall full of perfection awards. The You name it, Carlisle's given it to us. We're one of the top 20% in the nation, and that gets you work. Period. So
Yep.
once you saddle up with a manufacturer, do all of their training, it's a win-win situation. You have a partner in the industry that's going to help you grow, because if you help them be successful, I bring them work, they'll bring me work, right? It's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You can't just go out and not do things properly. If you want to get to the level where all of us are right now, you have to have strategic partnerships, and you have to show up properly in a perfect way with licensed, insured, everything, and doing the best work you can to make their jobs easier, which they will in turn help you be successful. I can't stress it enough. You have to saddle up to the people in this meeting right now. This
Yeah.
type of people, manufacturers and roofing consultants.
Yeah. Well said, Pete. Well said. So as you've grown your business, Pete, what are some things that your manufacturer partner has done or provided that made the most difference in your day to day or pushed you to take that job that made you a little nervous?
Well, the first thing is immediate answers. Like when I'm calling somebody, they know I need the answer right away. And
Hmm.
the reps, the Carlisle reps and the Henry reps have been Johnny on the spot. You know, that's my biggest thing. I think that's made Go Green successful is we answer the phone, you know, it's kind of crazy. It's a concept. Um, but their confidence in us makes us want to be better. Okay. Because the people doing the work in the field are your salespeople also. So if we're making Eric's job or John's job harder, we will probably not be invited any longer to these jobs, right?
Yeah.
So when we get invited, I'm already on high alert. It's like, all right, I'm going to read these specs 15 times. I'm going to ask 1,000 questions, probably drive them a little crazy. But knowing that they have confidence in us to perform makes us perform that much better constantly. Right. And the same thing goes for clients, just a regular client out there. You know, we do not want to let people down. And we have worked so hard to get to this point. Everybody in the team of Go Green has worked 30, 25, 30 years to get to this point. And to have a contractor and a roofing consultant, I mean, a manufacturer and a roofing consultant go, hey, we want you to walk this 500 square job or 10,000 square job. I don't care what the size is. I don't want to let them down,
Yep.
period. And it translates into making people's lives easier because I'm not making their lives harder with doing poor work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. John, anything to add on what Pete said from like a roof consultant's perspective working with manufacturers?
Yeah, no, I mean Pete nailed it obviously on that, and he's you've got to work making good products, getting products out into the marketplace in a timely manner. I mean those are table stakes. You have to do that, or you're just not not going to be included.
Right.
But the big things to me are I love the responsiveness that Pete mentioned, but things like education are man, to me that is one of the most important things a manufacturer can do, and not only education to the contractors, but also to the specifier world. They specifiers historically have kind of held back a little bit on fluid applied restoration because they didn't have the knowledge and the confidence in it that some of the other folks in the marketplace did. So, putting a concerted effort towards that group is important. And then, just kind of, um, yeah, I think that's it. I mean, the education piece, and then from a or from a specifier perspective, supporting specifiers, with specs and responses and technical questions and inspection scheduling and all that fun stuff. But those are all important, and those are what keep you in the specs as a manufacturer, from my perspective, and warranty support and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Eric, it's your time. From a manufacturer's perspective, what are the things you look for in a contractor partner, and how do you elevate their capabilities over time?
Sure. Well, the easy answer is someone who's already in the space that's doing quality work and
Got it.
understands the best roofing practice, right? That's always the easy answer. But at the same time, searching for applicators that are having the willingness to learn and educate, not only themselves, but kind of work together to climb that rung of the ladder to become an advocate, just as Pete and Go Green is now,
Got
for
it.
Henry at the same time. But understanding that that sometimes that we're just not going to be the right fit. Again, continuing with the education portion of it. We know that crews they will have a turnover, and it's kind of letting us know up front is being open and honest. It's like, hey, we want to continue to learn. We want to be successful, and putting them in that successful through going through our Henry University training program and being on that roof when they start, and you'll be able to elevate them further. Because while there are a lot of fluid applied manufacturers out there, some things just apply a little differently. But make sure that you're setting up from success of showing proper details, making sure they're following again the best roofing practices of not coating wet roofs. Again, restoration entails repair. In my presentations, I have a perfect example of a classic car, right? We're taking, old and making it like new again, but that still undertakes certain repairs, right? We can't just slap, paint over a rusted surface and think it's going to be
Right.
great. Same thing with the body of the car. We're doing certain repairs for restoration. That's what we're doing. We're making that roof back to a watertight and serviceable condition before we even start. At the same time as I've kind of operated the principle of a kind of a graduated program. Everybody wants the premium gold seal warranty that Henry covets at the same time, and we may have to start at somewhere else and continue to
Yeah.
grow and to educate and follow those warranty inspections to where, hey, minimal punch list items, and then kind of go through a few roofs and kind of step our way up to say, hey, we can graduate these from to the next tier of warranty, to our premium level of warranty. But that takes a lot of, again, partnership as we're looking at, and working together and making sure that, hey, we are partners. We're going to market together to help grow both our businesses at the same time. And it still comes back to education and knowledge at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes back to Gordon's question earlier, right? Like everyone wants to know, getting into the space, what are those signs when it's too late and you need to just tear off, or it's a simple repair and then restore. So having a manufacturer partner that can help educate your crews and your teams is so important moving forward. So, Pete, what does your business look like now? And what are you still exploring to keep growing as a fluid applied roofing contractor?
Well, we're really focusing on fluid applied, and um, the the client is highly educated. So, with the advent of the internet, and they can reach out to people easily and get a lot of information. So, what it looks like now is I think that fluid applied is going to grow exponentially even over the next 5 years. So, I'm really
Yeah.
focusing on that and just keep educating ourselves through the manufacturer to bring better products to our clients and to create better workplaces. Because if we invest in our workforce by supplying them training through the manufacturers, it grows a better workforce, better product, makes everybody lives better, makes our representatives successful, makes us successful. So I really think that the fluid applied industry is going to exponentially grow. I mean, it's we're riding the wave right now, even though this wave has been building up for the last 65 years probably. But I'm very excited about it because also with that, the fluid applied, like we talked about earlier, the price of entry is much cheaper than back in the day. If you wanted to be a roofer, you still had to buy a pancake, um, compressor, hoses, guns, tear offs, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
now with the proper guidance, you can come in and just get your license, insurance, and start applying fluid applied roofs, which means the younger generations are going to really come into the industry and do some quality work. And that's very exciting to me because that's really what I love doing, is teaching uh, the next generations, because they ask questions. Like when I was coming up in this industry and I wanted to go commercial, I walked into a few commercial companies around here in the Bay Area, which is highly competitive, and I was told to get the hell out of here, you know. But now with the internet, they can hit me up on TikTok and ask me questions, and it's great. So I think that Go Green is hopefully going to be at the forefront of the applications because we're already doing 7 to 10,000 square roofs on
Yeah,
a yearly basis.
that's huge.
I'm doing multiple of those and working with. I'm very excited about John T. Hall, the late adopters of the roofing consultants. But I need them because on these huge roofs, I don't have the machinery or the know-it-all to use these infrared machines to check the moisture and stuff like that. So we have to work hand in hand and with the manufacturer because they have their roofing consultants they enjoy working with. So I think all three of us coming together and the more transparency within the industry, we're hitting a golden age of roofing right now. And I am so excited. And like I mentioned earlier in a discussion that wasn't recorded, but roofing's cool now. Blue collar is really cool stuff,
It
you
is.
know, and that makes me so happy because roofing has given me every dream I could have ever thought of. And I never thought it would have, and I'm here
Right.
with you guys and we're doing an amount of work, that is mind blowing to me. And I'm so excited. And to get, I know you hit a passion nerve here. Sorry, guys.
No,
But,
that's great.
that to get the new roofing contractors in here and doing it right out of the gate is very exciting. So
Yeah.
and if anybody has any questions, hit me up on TikTok at Mr. Pete. I answer them for free. Don't be scared. All right.
Well, we actually have a follow-up question kind of to that sentiment of, doing a quality job right out of the gate. And the question's from Gordon. Thank you, Gordon. How many days or hours of training should a contractor entering the fluid applied roofing restoration market start with to be comfortable that they're doing a quality job out of the gate?
I'll say as
Wow.
many as it takes.
Yeah.
As many as
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
exactly.
ongoing.
It's
It
nonstop.
Yep. Every roof is different. Every situation different. Not again, different details. Maybe a different way to do it. Unfortunately, it's continued. Yeah, we can do a full day of classroom, and we can do a full day on the roof. But at the end of the day, it's that continued education, right? It's every time you're going to see something different on every single roof you get on, and it may have to be something that's outside of a typical detail that we have to then go back and revisit. As far as how can we make sure that that detail is taken care of properly, sealed. Again, at the end of the day, another one of my cliche taglines is I don't like callbacks. So if contractors doesn't call back, that means I'm not getting a call back, right? So making sure that roof is leak tight before we leave.
yeah.
And unfortunately, it's continued education as we go, throughout the process.
Would you say also working with a roof consultant, early on, like if you have a young company, you're a young, um, you know, company owner, working with roof consultant will help mitigate some of those mistakes early on?
I think it certainly can. It obviously has to be a roof consultant who embraces fluid applied roof restoration versus some that don't. And there are still some that don't. And when we're working in my industry, in the roof consulting world and engineering world, we're really trying to get more and more folks to understand and embrace the technology. But yeah, to both their points, I mean, the manufacturers are going to come out, they're going to train you on their products, proper application of their products, limitations of their products. And that's great. And as a roofer, you need that from all the manufacturers that you're going to be dealing with. So if you're dealing with one manufacturer, great. And as they bring out new products, you need to work with them. If you're dealing with five, you need to do that times five. I sat through a presentation last week, and many of you will know who Joe Sorrentino is. He's working with the NRCA now on
Joe.
their. Did I lose you guys?
No, you're
Oh,
still
Ah,
here,
you're
but
back.
I was in a presentation last week, and Joe Sorrentino was talking about the NRCA's pro certified training, and
okay.
they're wanting to add fluid applied to that, not just shingles and flat and
Perfect.
whatnot. So we're seeing and I offer classes. Heck, I have a 2-day class on assessment. I have another 2-day class on restoration where we talk about the technology. I mean, you could spend weeks in the classroom, but to Pete's point, you need to have classroom, you need to have, folks that have, mentors, if you will, and you need to just get out there and get your hands dirty and do it and learn by trial and error. And when I'm on a roof as a consultant, I will certainly look at things. That's part of what I'm doing for the owner. I'm paid to do, third party quality oversight. And I'll take that young roofer aside and kind of talk to him about, hey, why don't we think about this on this detail or this? And, you don't dress them down in front of the client or the owner. You take them aside and you give them some constructive criticism and you try to make, you improve the culture in the industry as a whole. And yes, I hope consultants are doing that. And Pete, I hope you work with consultants. I hope the consultants in your world are doing that as well.
I work with quite a few consultants, and to when you start to get to the consultant level, you already got to be doing something right, right? Because that's a big deal. Consultants are managing multi-millions, if not billions of dollars worth of roofing systems. And a lot of times when you're learning a new system, this is exactly like Eric and you talked about. When you're learning a new system, you have to get your hands dirty. First, you do the training with the manufacturer, and then you run out and you got a roof. You probably already have a roof, right? 50 square, a couple hundred square or something. And then what I always do, because we still do it, we still do new processes. We'll have a manufacturer's rep there for the first day or three, and we'll do it that way, right? So then we'll start talking to our consultants and see if they're specing that material and everything, because working with consultants is a whole different level of company that needs, you've got some time and a name in the industry before you get plopped on a 5,000 square consulted
Got it.
roofing system. And that's what you're working for, because you have to have this. This is what I call the trifecta right here. This is the contractor, the roofing consultant, and the manufacturer all working together to get the best product to the client. And that's what the newer roofing contractors are working to be in this room right now.
Mm-hmm.
In my seat, that's where they want to be to do this. And it starts with proper education with the manufacturer, working very well with the manufacturer talking to, this has been my journey, a manufacturer going, hey, Pete Harding over there at Go Green has been doing really good work for us, John. You might want to include them in one of your, job walks and bids just to see where they come in at. And then, you might not win first couple jobs, first couple seasons or something, but then, the trust and everything's built up. It takes time to go from a $500,000 a year company to a $30 million a year company. A lot of time
Yeah.
and trust and work with these people in this room are what makes the difference. And starts with the education from the manufacturer.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to a little bit of a different path here, why should contractors be committed to offering not just coated roofs, but all fluid applied restoration systems?
Yeah, I think Megan, I think John kind of touched on it before, and we kind of go back and forth. What is a coated roof, a painted roof, and what is a fluid
Right.
restoration, right? And
Yep.
again, restoration means that certain repairs have to be made or are being made. And again, all roofs need some type of repair. There's very few, if any, unicorns out there to where we can actually just restore the roof as is. It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen, right? Because we're at that point of restoration for a reason. So there is a difference of just putting coating down, and I think that's where in the past that negative connotation of coatings and painting has gotten the flack, is the fact that that prep work, the taking care of not the best practices of not going through and removing moisture, wet areas, etc., is where the difference is. Um, we're in the fluid applied restoration business. So are, our applicators, consultants, right? At the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to continue to push forward for that sustainability factor. We want to continue to obviously, put money in our pockets, right, Pete? And continue that, that growth in the industry at the same time. And that's best practice. Just coating a roof and just, isn't the same. And it's when we've hit it a million times, but it's that education and that knowledge, and even passing on to the building owners that we can get in front of as well. It's like, hey, you may have had a bad experience in the past, and we understand that, but this is why working with us or working with this particular applicator is, in your best interest for this reason, because this is what we're going to do. We're going to restore that roof properly prior to applying a fluid applied restoration. Because that's what we're trying to do. And I think that's where, focusing on that as a contractor, continues to set yourself apart, still in the business. Because unfortunately there are some applicators out there that are still just coating roofs.
Yeah.
And, to be able to, and I've had, low bid contractors lose the job because of talking to the building owners, the decision makers, of what actual fluid restoration is, even though they were a higher price. We in the applicator won that project because of the education and educating the building owners or the representatives of why, hey, low bid, we sometimes that coating a roof isn't the way we want to go to continue to protect all your assets, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say spot on. The only thing I'm going to add to that is, we've got, well, two things. So one, contractors that are going to do this type of work, they need to have expertise in traditional roofing because there are repairs and upgrades to that roof, but they also need to have some expertise in coatings. That's where your guy who experienced in paint or exterior waterproofing comes in, because you do have to understand everything from over application, under application, pinholing, how these coatings are going to behave, the equipment that goes along with it. So it takes a little different mindset from the contractor's perspective to really go in and do a full-fledged restoration versus heavy on tear out or heavy on quote paint only or coating only. But with that, I would also say, I've got clients. I've got a client that has 400 properties, and they're massive properties. And one of their properties might have 40, 50, 60 different roof sections on it. And these clients are now embracing knowledgeable contractors to come in and they hire me. I come in, I do an assessment, and I say, okay, these 10 roof sections have to be torn off and replaced, and these 30 roof sections can be restored with these repairs and upgrades, etc. And so having contractors that can handle that and do that properly are critical. So and the owners are embracing it because it is repair and restoration versus putting that Earl Scheib Mako paint job on that classic car with rust on it.
Yeah.
Earl
Yeah.
Scheib.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With that said, the foreman here, except for one of them and all of our fluid crews, were built up hot tar guys. So the product with polyester fabric goes down a lot like built up hot tar. They had to do a lot of training for waterproofing, and then there's a feel to the product. Each different product has a feel, has a look, and that's, that is application, being taught through application. And you have to know roofing, period, because if you don't know how water behaves or understand it within your DNA, it's going to leak. You're just putting a bunch of product up there. Then you're going to have a client that hates fluid applied roofing because they went with the low price leader. And it's not, within those products, if we rarely win a project because we're the low price leader, if it's all apples to apples. We have reputation backed by manufacturers, roofing consultant, and a whole thing of references of other large companies we do it for. So it's not just about throwing it on there. There's a lot into it. You have to be a roofer. We came from the built up hot tar section, but we already knew about maintenance. We know how to maintain a roof. We came from the era of we tore off the roof first, then we laid it up. So we know how it comes off and how it goes back on. So I think that was is a great little segment right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for answering that so well. So, to kind of start wrapping this up, because we only have 10 minutes left. This is crazy. This hour has gone by so fast. But how can contractors, manufacturers, specifiers alike use, this educational language to further the industry and make other contractors' journeys in the fluid applied roofing space easier? Maybe John, you can hit this one
Yeah,
first.
no, I'll dive into that. That's good. This has been kind of a mission of mine to try to change the culture and the perception around fluid applied. I mean, I've been working on this for, gosh, 20, 30 years. And, to your point, using the language, I mean, getting away from coating and painting and start talking about restoration and repairs, start talking with your clients about proactive, roof maintenance,
Yeah.
and having a plan in place to, get eyes on these roofs more than just once every 5 or 10 years, and trying to become, an advisor. The roofers need to become a trusted advisor. The manufacturer needs to become a trusted advisor to the building owners, and true trust, not just, uh, selling them flash and sizzle, but having the knowledge to back your advice and your guidance. I think I think contractors, I'd love to see, I'm seeing more contractors engage with these large shows. I know Western States is coming up with IRE, with IBEC, engage with professional organizations and other people that do what you do, and listen to them, talk to them, set through, webinars like this. And you'll learn that dialogue and you'll pick that up. So, I'd say use the language and think about what you say, and obviously professional, polish yourself up a little bit, but also follow that up with your actions and your processes. If you have clear-cut processes, that even internal quality control processes, I think that's important. And tell your story. As you go out to your clients and your owners, tell your story. Get
Yeah.
passionate. I love Pete. I mean, you get passionate and you kind of go off on some of these topics. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that passion carries through to your owners and your clients. And I think that's where we win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pete or Eric?
Eric.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
mean, spot on. Everybody working together, right? So, whether it be, the applicators, the consultants, specifiers, as Pete, you mentioned before, as the resources that are available at the fingertips for building owners, they're becoming more educated, and they're seeking out. So as far as elevating just the fluid applied restoration industry, is to continue those best practices and continue that same message as you continue to talk to new applicators as well. And then even going to your old school roofers, using air quotes here, traditional style roofers at the same time of educating them, as they've, I think a lot of them started to see that turn of, hey, maybe this isn't such a bad thing anymore.
Yeah.
We can continue to extend the life of this roof, and I don't have to have tear off crews, and we're doing restorations. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that continued process and continued education, and having forums just like this, not just from the shows, but having these open forums and these podcasts to be able to to preach that message, in the industry, and continue to again educate, not even within but obviously outside as well. And I think that's really the goal, and how they continue this wave that the fluid applied restoration industry is continuing to see. We're seeing it for a reason. It's that continued growth and knowledge, in this segment, that's allowing us to do what we do and what we enjoy to do every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, with what they both said was awesome. And I'm with John about because I talk about built up fluid applied roofing systems, right? And back in the day, we thought the aluminum coating was reflective in everything, but we know that's not true, right? Nowadays, and I was a kid, but to be in the, I'm kind of in awe right now about my whole career is flashing before me right now because I'm in the room of where I've always wanted to be, right? At this very moment, at the pinnacle of go at what am I trying to say? You riding the wave of the coatings, right? The fluid applied roofing systems and coatings are really taking off. And if somebody wants to be where I am at in this room with you guys and doing the type of work we're doing, it's more easily accessible than ever right now because we have these educational forums to do it at. And you have to be join your local roofing association, contact your manufacturers. So the first thing I would do is become closer to your manufacturer. Your manufacturer will refer you to a roofing consultant they work with, you know? And then the thing is about the jobs we do, all three of us, is somebody's going to be held accountable. We're doing
Right.
multi-million dollar projects. And if you want to lose sleep at
Yeah.
night, try to shortcut something on a roofing consultant. Okay. You will not sleep. So you have to do everything per specification. And it's actually really easy. If you start out working with the manufacturer and you go, hey, I got this 50 square or 100 square roof. What's the spec? They give you the spec. Oh, you do it exactly the way they tell you to do it. And it keeps you also from liability aspects too. You know, you're not shooting from the hip. And I love your dog. And then, so I totally forgot the question, but because I was just tripping on like, I'm sitting here with these guys, like my heroes in the industry. I'm going, whoa, I'm here. I and the future has so much with this fluid applied, and it does start with the language. Like it's fluid applied roofing systems. Like the warranties are 20-year warranties. They're exponentially growing in these warranties. I've heard of people doing 30-year warranties out of on roofing systems, fluid applied roofing systems, and it's the technology is growing so quickly, and the roofer better have this in their toolbox or they're going to lose opportunities. Lost opportunities translate into lost food on your people's tables. And that's
Yeah.
unacceptable. So
Hmm.
you better put this in your tool pouch or you're going to be left behind.
Absolutely. So well said, Pete. And I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Eric and John, so much for
Thank
just
you.
sharing your wisdom and most importantly, too, thank you to Henry, a Carlisle company, for sponsoring this coffee conversation. This has been phenomenal, and thanks to everyone in the audience for your questions and comments. Gordon earlier said, what did he say? Really nice work today. The industry used to be very twitchy about restoration, and some contractors are still just doing a paint job, like Eric discussed. John T did a good job describing all the different kinds of remediations and repairs needed prior to applying any coatings. And Pete is just so wise. Thank you so much. Thank you. I can't. This
Thank
was
you.
fabulous.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Me too.
Yay.
It was awesome.
Everyone listening, definitely go check out Henry's directory on CoatingsCoffeeShop.com to learn more. This will be up on CoatingsCoffeeShop.com within 24 to 48 hours, so you can watch it, share it out, send it to your grandma, whatever you want to do with it. And we'll be seeing you next time on the next Coatings Coffee Conversations. Thank you all so, so much again. Have a great day.